Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. It's me again, Susan Ozer. I'm the founder and CEO of the One-to-One Mentoring Network, and I'm very, very happy to be with you again. And we have a treat for you, another treat. This is the third episode of our One-to-One Mentoring Conversations. And this time we have one of our mentees. So without much ado, I'm going to let her introduce herself. So can you tell us your name? And also, other than being one of the Mentoring Network's mentee, what your role is in the organization?
Thank you so much, Dr. Susan. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be on this platform. My name is Tammie Takon. And as Dr. Susan said, I am a mentee through the organization, but I have also been very privileged to work with One-to-One as a youth ambassador. And especially in the initial phases of launching it, was able to kind of help organize and facilitate that initial engagement. So I'm really happy to be here and have a discussion a bit more about mentorship and then also about being a young person at the early stage of my career. And just as a bit of additional information, I have recently graduated. I graduated from Cardiff University from a modern languages and culture program, and I currently work as a project coordinator for a non-profit charity working with young people to put them at the center of governance and decision making. But hopefully you'll hear a little bit more about that throughout today's conversation.
Yes, Tammy, I've been following you for a long time, and I remember the very first time we had our conversations when we started this mentoring network was founded, and I mean it's remarkable for just over a short time. I can say probably I would say 5 years, isn't it?
Yes.
Quite a number of things have happened to you, and it just shows how important it is because I know how the importance you put on mentoring
Mm,
and the role of mentoring in getting you where you are at the moment. Yes, and in the
absolutely.
journey. So, as you look back on your journey, that is looking at school, university, post graduation, and now what would you say were the defining moments of your life that helped you get to this point?
I think that there's never one singular moment that has led me to where I am now. I think honestly, I've been very privileged to have so many instances that have kind of grown me as a person. Definitely through education, I've been lucky to access a lot of great opportunities directly through leadership and mentoring to like creative arts to like research and policy. I'm a very diverse person. So I like to dabble in a lot of different areas. So I would say that just being able to access those opportunities across education have definitely built the platform and the kind of background that I have now. Honestly, I think people play a bigger role in my life than like specific stages. Like I've definitely my family, the opportunities that I've seen them access, my mum being a very key figure in my life in terms of her work within the healthcare industry, but also through her work trying to provide platforms for young people to advocate for themselves. That has also reflected into my interests, funnily enough. And I think that's all, contributed to the person that I am.
You know, you've mentioned something about opportunities and leadership.
Yes.
I'm sure the our listeners and viewers would like to know more because here we are looking at you as mentee that
Mm,
is just starting on your career
yeah.
journey, right? So you will be termed as somebody who is on an early career journey. And so
Yes.
it's very interesting, that even at this early stage, you have had opportunities that has is almost shaping the leader that I suspect you would be in the future. And I
Yes.
think it would be quite nice for you to just expand on that opportunity that is shaping your leadership journey. And I think it would be something that our mentees and our listeners would really like to hear a little bit more about.
Absolutely. I would say in kind of my early secondary school experience, I was able to dabble in a lot of extracurriculars that kind of concern student leadership, but I think the most pivotal stage of that occurred when I was in sixth form, so when I was 16 to 17, and I found myself accessing opportunities to be a prefect. I was a quality and diversity prefect in my sixth form, and I think most memorably, I tried to lead an initiative with young people in my school, advocating for young people from marginalized ethnic backgrounds and trying to add a lot more representation through curriculum resources, school provisions like through posters and also talks and assemblies. Unfortunately, it occurred within the pandemic. So I think that played a role in how far I was able to actualize that. But I do think just being able to have the platform to meet with my headmaster, to meet with heads of sixth form, to really start a discussion about how we can see effective leadership from a peer space, how we can, as students, advocate for other students. And I think in that period, I remember being just very empowered to take that on. I think it doesn't even matter to me if there's an opportunity readily established. I think I'm always looking to create opportunities for myself in spaces to be a leader or to have a voice or to help represent other people. So those were some of the ways that I was able to do that, as well as literacy mentoring for other young people of lower key stages in my secondary school. And when you look back on it, there are a lot of different opportunities that I was lucky to access during that particular stage of my life, but definitely all coming from that foundation of wanting to support other young people.
Yeah, I know that delving a little bit into leadership can be daunting. Yes.
Yeah.
What kind of leader do you think you probably will be or are? If you
Mm,
just hazard a guess from the little experience that you've had into leadership and you continue to have, because obviously let's take one-to-one mentoring, for example, you are
yeah.
in a key leadership position. We've discussed things that we could do together.
Yeah.
What would you say? It may not be a fair question, but if you hazard a guess.
No, I love the challenging questions. So I would say that I I'm a very relational person. So I think
Mhm.
in the way that I connect with people, it's always about how we can put people first. I think that's always been a core facet of my leadership approach. I think on top of that, I'm definitely a creative thinker. When I think about how I work as, a voice or how I use my voice in these spaces, I'm always thinking about how I can translate complex ideas to ensure that they are received by as many people as possible. Even in the job that I have today, every day I'm challenged to ensure that my communication is my strongest skill point because it's all about making sure that everyone feels incorporated in the change that you want to see. And so I think I've always made sure that when I'm speaking to people, I hear them and they hear me. So I think that links back to the relational point of making sure I have that connection with the people that I'm working with. So I think hopefully that answers the question a little bit more.
Yeah, it has. And I'm hearing compassion, I'm
Yeah.
hearing empathy, because of course we've got compassionate leaders. Let's talk about obstacles because I don't, in any journey, there will be obstacles. I always think about an obstacle course. I've never played golf, but I haven't played golf, but I know that in golf, they call it a course, right? And there are always
Yes.
obstacles. In life, there are obstacles. Have you experienced obstacles? And if you have, how have you navigated this?
Definitely, I think going back to that particular case study of me being 16, 17, and really taking to a specific form of leadership in a very bold and new way in which I hadn't done before, there were many obstacles. I think being a good leader is not just about how well you can direct, how well you can initiate. It's also about how you are able to delegate. And I think that was a big skill I had to learn at a young age because I think a lot of the representation I've had in my life is about how to be self sufficient and independent in your leadership. And that can be an asset to some degree, but it can also be detrimental in other spaces. And I think when dealing with topics about equity and equality and diversity, you need to have the ability to delegate to people to ensure that responsibility goes beyond yourself, because it was emotionally taxing at times. And I think being able to delegate now, I'm able to share out that responsibility. I'm able to more effectively lead, because I'm not taking it all by myself. And I think sometimes there's, I went to a really great talk with my mum, which Afua Hirsch was leading, and she spoke about a lot of activists slash leaders, being out at such a young age because they take it on themselves all the time. And I think I looked at myself at 16 to 17, and I was definitely in a burnout phase because I thought I had to take it on by myself. That's just simply not possible. There are systems in place that you have to navigate, and there's often bureaucracy and red tape, and you need a team. And I think that's where I am now, where I'm looking at how to lead within a team rather than being a leader of one.
Okay, I think I'm very curious. You mentioned something about the COVID. There's something that really, really impacted all of us.
Absolutely.
You were doing something good and then COVID set in. So looking back, if you had an opportunity like this, right? And something like COVID set in, how would you probably, what are the lessons that you learned that you can then translate to the next experience?
I think COVID is such a important time to reflect on, because it was probably the most unpredictable period of my life. And I don't know about you, Susan, but I felt like time massively compressed in that period. So when I was, you know, trying to lead initiatives in school relating to equality and diversity, I think the timeline that you usually have for a project is a lot more spaced out and organized. And I think sometimes the urgency of wanting to affect change quickly to not lose out on a window was amplified, because I was dealing with a period that things were rapidly changing, information was changing each day. And I think a lot of people wanted quite a bit of control in that period. So I think in that period, I tried to action a lot of things a little bit quicker than, I was able to. Looking back now, I would say change is a marathon, not a sprint. And that is about
Mm,
pacing yourself. It's about being able to say,
mm,
what can I realistically
mm,
get done now? And what can I deal with later?
mm.
And so, yeah, I think just being a lot more balanced in mind in the process of leading and, facilitating change.
Oh my goodness. Love that. I love that. Change, change is a marathon and not
Mm,
a sprint.
yes.
Amazing. I mean, for someone so young and for someone starting out on your career, for you to learn that valuable lesson. And it's also because you put yourself out there. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, some of our mentees are shy, they struggle. But how will you learn? How can you learn some of the life's lessons without putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation? And again, I would also keep always encouraging our mentees to reflect, reflect, reflect. It's all about lifelong learning. And
Mm,
the only way, one of the ways one can learn is actually take those lessons, take those experiences, and then keep reflecting and then improve on what you did previously. And the more one does that, the more improvement comes, the more
yeah.
empowerment comes. So I
Yeah.
love that. Now, Tammy, let's talk about resilience. I
Okay.
love resilience.
Yeah.
And obviously, we are from different generations. I'm coming from the generation of your parents, and we have different experiences. We moved from completely came from another country to another country, and we had to start all over again, learn specific customs, adapt.
Mm,
That, I think, contributed to some of the resilience that we have.
yeah.
Now, as someone like you, a younger generation, what are your thoughts about resilience? How are you developing resilience?
So I think that's a really important question. I too also love resilience, and I would say at this point in my life, it's probably one of my strongest skills. With resilience, I find that even though I've been living in England for the majority of my life, I do find that resilience has revealed itself in different ways throughout my upbringing. So a lot of my schooling was in, predominantly white middle class backgrounds or settings, sorry. And whilst, the experiences socioeconomically were very similar to my own, I do find that I had to learn how to be resilient and mature at a very early age because I was aware of the different dynamics, race and ethnicity wise, within those spaces. And so, not just from a leadership space, but just growing up as a young Black British person in the UK, I had to learn that in certain spaces, I didn't feel the most represented or I didn't feel the most heard. And even at a primary school age, where there were probably two Black people, including myself, in the year group and across the key stage, I found that that also had an impact in terms of dynamics with other members of staff, other young people, and having to learn how to really self advocate at such a young age. And I think it has, yes, I think having to grow up quite early does make you mature in one respect, but I do also think that it causes you sometimes to lose out on some childhood experiences at times. And having to be very emotionally resilient doesn't mean you always give yourself grace in situations. And so I think resilience now is a combination for me of being strong and giving myself grace. And I think the way that I practice that each day is definitely with the support network that I'm privileged to have in my life, like my family, my friends, even people that have been on my professional journey for the last 8 years, I would say. They've really grounded my perspective of who I am. And in terms of when challenges do arise, having that perspective allows me to say, maybe a setback, but I will continue forward. Maybe a challenge, but I will continue forward. And yeah, I think that kind of summarizes my take and approach on that.
Yeah, yeah. So you basically highlighted the role of network, the
Oh,
specific
absolutely.
networks that you have, surrounding
Yes.
yourself with those networks, those sorts of things that help you stay grounded. So you can always fall back on when you need to.
Well, absolutely. I think
Very
having that
important, isn't
sounding
it?
board
Yeah.
is really important.
Yes. I'm hearing that it's, yes, we can also dig into ourselves, but the importance of other people and not making sure we are not isolated.
Yes,
Yeah. And
I
that
do think
helps
so.
in building that resilience. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, so I'm a project coordinator for a charity called Leaders Unlocked. And it's really interesting my history with the organization itself. When I had first started uni, there was an opportunity to be a young leader through one of their youth programs. And I took to that, and that has taken me on a really interesting path with the organization and being able to communicate with stakeholders across health and policing and crime. And so, whilst you're in the final year stage of university and you're applying for so many different opportunities, I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to work with them on a project that they're currently rolling out in Hertfordshire with the Hertfordshire Constabulary and Police and Crime Commissioner. And the crux of the project is giving young people a platform to represent themselves in local issues, getting them to talk about various forms of youth crime like county lines and exploitation, violence against women and girls, antisocial behavior, etc. And my role within that is definitely in terms of like research and impact. So understanding what the issues are, making sure that the young people are being made aware of these situations and being equipped with the tools to be able to advocate for themselves across various settings like their school, their workplace, or their social settings. And so it's been really, really empowering for me, honestly, because I think when I look at where I was 5 years ago when I was in sixth form, I think this is definitely the path that, I was made for, being able to get involved with advocacy on a community and local level as well. And hopefully, who knows where the future goes, but be able to build on that even further.
Excellent. So what do you enjoy most about your work?
There's a lot of different aspects of my work I really enjoy. I think I'm a very analytical person. So being able to focus on specific issues and really unpack them in a lot of depth and understand the rolling developments in the local area with local community figures has been a really brain teasing aspect of my job that I really love. And I think more holistically, being able to deliver such high quality engagements with young people, being able to go into spaces with young people or with decision makers and have really honest conversations about youth crime and youth community safety and really getting them engaged to make change in their areas. I think I love seeing people be really empowered by these conversations and have such a readiness to affect change themselves, because I think for me it's always going to be a nostalgic point because I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be so passionate about something and wanting to have the urgency to see it happen. So yeah, it's always a great part of my work as well.
Have you been in a position where you've had to chair a meeting, for example?
Yeah, so monthly, I chair youth advisory group meetings between
Excellent.
young people who are on our youth commission and with the police or with the police and crime commissioner. So, and I think my experience before that has prepped me quite well for that, because I think I get into spaces that allow me to public speak and I just take to it. And so that has been a very fun aspect of my job. And so, yeah, alongside those advisory group meetings, delivering talks to anywhere from 30 people up to 130 people. So yeah, it's been it's been very
Excellent.
dynamic.
Excellent. Yeah, I am definitely hearing some or highlighting, you're highlighting some very important interpersonal skills just
Yeah.
by what you do. I'm looking at leadership again. Communication is also key because, if you're in front of chairing meetings it's not an easy task. It's not a task to sniff at. Yeah.
Yes.
We're looking at engagement. So you have to have very strong negotiation skills and then very strong communication as well. So it's not just being confident in speaking publicly, but actually people understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then they are
Two
not
big
just
important
understanding
things.
what you're saying, but they're
Yeah.
actually engaging with what you're saying. And
Yeah.
then the next stage from that is from engagement to actually doing, being active in what you have suggested or recommended.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's very good.
Just to add to that point, I want people to take from this conversation that confidence is not built overnight. I would say it has taken me years to feel, especially in light of imposter syndrome, as
Mm.
if I belong in a space, if I'm honest. And it's often that it can flip between, yeah, I feel incredibly confident. I'm ready to kind of get out there and engage with people, to a day where I feel as though my voice doesn't have any weight and wondering if I can, effectively communicate to people. And so I would always say, again, as we've mentioned with the topic of resilience, to keep grounding yourself in those rooted affirmations of self, of knowing who you are and having a network of people that reinforce those
Around you.
ideas. Exactly.
And mentoring, please. I think
Oh,
we should
mentoring,
make sure
absolutely.
we say it loud and clear. We have
Yeah,
to keep emphasizing the importance of mentoring because some of these things, these skills that you have developed, they haven't, like you're saying, your favorite saying, it has been a marathon. They didn't develop, and you are only young, you're only in your 20s.
I know.
You're already running the marathon. Imagine us in our later years, how long we've been on this marathon still running the race, right? I really feel very proud, in the sense that we as an organization have, contributed somewhat to this
Absolutely.
development and not just you, but to some of our mentees as well. You threw out a very important word, imposter syndrome, two words.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think our listeners and our viewers would want to know a little bit more about that. How have you overcome or navigated that imposter syndrome when it read its ugly head?
I would still say I'm on an ongoing journey, to be frank, with imposter syndrome. But what I will say is that there's a real importance. I really implore organizations to kind of follow the same steps that you guys have done in involving young people in these platforms to be able to speak and connect and communicate, because I think it's from that aspect of practice makes perfect, where you're able to practice those skills and be provided with real evidence that you can whatever it is that you might be fearful that you're not able to do, you can do that thing. I've been told all my life, "Oh, you're very outspoken. Oh, you're very bubbly. You're very outgoing." But unless you're put in situations where you feel that you can actually contribute those skills, you will always kind of doubt if it's possible or if it actually aligns with who you are. So I'm always grateful for being bold enough to seek out the opportunities, but being received by these spaces to act on these opportunities like one-to-one mentoring, being able to be a youth ambassador and be able to contribute ideas, being able, especially it was a really poignant period for me to be able to contribute to the launch and be able to speak to people that came to that first session that we held. I think that is always going to stick in my mind as a very memorable moment because it really shaped the development of my speaking, of my ability to do what I'm doing today. So the network that you can have, the opportunities you can have, and honestly asking spaces to incorporate young people in those activities.
Yeah, it's quite psychological, isn't it?
Yeah,
All about mindset and changing the mindset that wherever you find yourself, you are there because you need to be there.
yeah,
And I know that imposter syndrome is, imposter syndrome and all the other expressions like shattering the glass ceiling and are actually real and also experienced by people, it affects mostly everyone.
yeah.
Yeah. Tell me, what are some of the tools, in your opinion, that people starting out in their careers need to develop a good work ethic? What do they need to develop a good work ethic? Because it's very important, isn't it?
And I think that's a layered question. I would personally say that having a curious mind and being open minded is an overlooked tool in developing your work ethic. I think often I see a lot of people shut themselves out of opportunities and therefore don't gain that exposure that I think helps to define a good work ethic, helps to define a discipline for work. And so I always say to expose yourself to as
Mhm.
much as possible, be as curious as you can be, because I think it can lead you to a path where you discover a new passion, you discover a skill that you hadn't recently known. And I think through that, it focuses on you then further cultivating that skill and then hammering in on a work ethic. And I would say flexibility. And it goes hand in hand because I think sometimes, and I think I've struggled with this in the past, being very rigid sometimes has been a setback for me being able to work, smart rather than working hard towards something. So being able to be adaptable is such a really good skill alongside, having that curiosity and an open mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, just your answer highlights the interpersonal skills, and this is one of the big things we work on in the
Yeah.
organization. I think with one-to-one, people make the assumption that we're just going to be talking about careers, but careers are important. But to develop your career, you need to surround it with strong interpersonal skills. This is one of the things we believe in. We believe in yes, helping people along their career journey, but also looking at their interpersonal skills and areas of their interpersonal skills that will need support. So
Mm,
things like communication skills, they may not be curious, they struggle with flexibility. Flexibility and adaptability is so important
mm,
because I mean the question will be, how can I be flexible and adaptable without feeling like I'm being walked over? All those things are interpersonal skills. All those things are specific skills that I believe that mentoring can unpick.
yeah. And that point
Obviously,
you made
this
about
yeah,
communication, I think would help that because we're not looking at skills in a vacuum, looking at skills and their wider
more
impact. So
holistic. Yes.
yeah, exactly, more holistic because you're not looking at communication through a means of professional aims.
Yeah.
You're looking at it as how it affects your own personal and social communication as well at the same time.
Yeah.
You're looking at flexibility not just as a way to get that next promotion. You're looking at it because it ultimately helps you to work better and work more efficiently in every aspect of your life. And so I think these skills go hand in hand
Yeah.
for just building yourself as a person for
Yeah.
that personal development.
Yeah. 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 It goes a long way because people really sometimes fall down when it comes to interpersonal skills. Even one interpersonal skill that is very, very important is, for example, consistency. And people struggle with being consistent. And when you are somebody that struggle with that, very soon people will realize that they'll find out if you can't
Yeah.
be consistent. If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, and then your line manager or your boss comes around and you say you do it, you procrastinate. So consistency, even I
Yeah.
always say that even when you are given a very job that is very easy, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. If you are consistent with the easy jobs, you will be consistent with the hard jobs. If you are not consistent with the easy job, you will not be with the hard
Yeah.
job. People who are not consistent, they struggle. It becomes very pervasive. I really like to highlight consistency because it is something that I sometimes see over and over again in when I'm mentoring mentees, that
Yeah.
consistency can be a very difficult interpersonal skill that can act as a barrier to progress.
If we are looking at interpersonal skills in
Mm.
a workplace setting, what I find is depending on how diverse your workplace is, even just from an age perspective, you
Yeah.
see different generational attitudes and how much one generation may prioritize communication through the format of talking to another person versus communication through text or remote communication. And so we're seeing a more nuanced display of what interpersonal skills look like. And that's been also interesting for me going into the workplace because I think there have been different priorities across the board.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, let's take even communication. Somebody will write something,
Yeah.
they'll just communicate with 4 or 5 lines. Somebody will have to write 100 lines to communicate. And then being a doctor, at the level that I am consultant, we
Mm,
see different reports where you
mm,
see a colleague will have maybe an A4, one side or two sides of an A4 and has said everything that needs to be said, and then someone will have to use 10 pages to communicate. So again, in my mentoring and again in my reflection, I always ask myself, what am I communicating? How am I communicating? And who am I communicating to?
y-
I wouldn't communicate to a professional the same way I'd communicate to a parent or a child. And even in my clinics, is when you're communicating with a child, you need to know how to communicate with the child. I
yeah.
remember a parent getting very cross because she felt someone, not myself, but someone had not communicated adequately with the child. And the only thing she said to me is that she felt that the person had to calm down. And this is not even using words. It's just the
Mm,
action of an adult coming down to a child's level can be something like, just even sit on a low seat and you
mm,
are communicating, so you've kind of almost taken that hierarchy away
yeah.
where you and the child are on the same level. So I
I
agree with
really
you.
like that. I really
Yeah.
like that point about being on the same level because I think
Yeah.
I found in such a short period of time transitioning from an academic
Mm.
space, which I've been involved with in the last 4 years, to a professional workplace setting, the difference in communication is there because when you're in university or some form of education,
Yeah.
you're encouraged to be verbose, you're encouraged to write long messages and to really flesh out your arguments. But when you're in a workplace with the dynamics that are involved there,
It's
you're encouraged to
different.
be concise. And I think looking at how I manage that balance, I mediate those two in my work, in how I communicate with a balance of young people and then also other stakeholders or decision makers, it really allows me to build on that skill of adaptability. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And even again, if you're talking, sticking to communication, non-verbal communication. I've I've been at interviews where it was just the non-verbal communication that actually did not help the candidate. So for mentees listening or watching, communication skills is such a big thing. How to communicate via emails. I remember getting cross because some colleagues, when they are starting an email, will say hi. I'm like, what's that? We all have to be professional. I believe in have good habits. Okay. And if you are you are in a team where people have, developed bad habits, some have very, very quickly that can spread. It's the
Yeah.
same way when you're going to meet people and, dress shabbily because, oh, everyone does. I think it's very important that people stand out, be yourself, be your
Mm,
own,
mm,
establish your own credibility and your own standards. That's how I see things. You see,
yeah.
you communicate well. And the communication is something that is a big thing, it's a big interpersonal skill that some of it has to be learned. Yeah, and it's not just communicating. For me in the medical world, when they start off with communicating and we go for communication skills, it's all about interviews, it's all about talking to parents and patients, it's all about passing exams. But then you go into the real world and communication can become very, very important, and especially nonverbal communication. Because when I sit in front of my patient, my nonverbal communication alone can trigger a complaint if I don't take care.
Mm,
So I do encourage
mm.
every mentee to build on the communication skills. Even if you have good communication skills, some of us we
Yes.
keep building. I'm in my 50s. I never keep that a secret, but I'm learning. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
about lifelong learning. Right. So what would you say are your other interests outside work? And how did you get into them?
So I would say I consider myself to be a very creative person. Even during school, I loved writing, especially writing poetry, and also like journal article writing. I know. Article
I love the
writing.
sound of poetry.
I know. I was finding some of my old poems from when I was in school, and I definitely have improved since then. But I think finding new creative skills has always been like an asset for me. Like in my final year of university, I took up radio broadcasting, which is a very new arena for me. And I think naturally with it being new, I was a little bit apprehensive. I said, what am I doing on radio? But as soon as I put my headphones on and got on the mic, I just,
Natural
it was
talent.
natural talent. It was almost as if I was at home. And so I loved it. And I actually had a radio show with my university radio society and then another organization in Cardiff. I started producing a radio show with them towards the end of my degree as well. And that involved me going out, interviewing people, especially because my interest was within music and understanding community development as well. So I was having like challenging and, important conversations with like local practitioners. And it was so fun. It was so thrilling for me because it's all about being in the mix with people, communicating. And that is something that I hope in the new year to get back into because I think it touches on a lot of different skills that I have to offer. And then on top of that, it's fun. I think most importantly, do things that are fun for you. I think as well as skill building, have time of play is what I would say. Have time for play.
So I hear that you are really big on your work-life balance. Is
Trying.
it, yeah, so other than radio, is there anything else you do in your leisure time, to relax, to wind down?
I've been recently kind of reconnecting through sport and physical activity. I think a lot of things that I used to enjoy while I was in school, like dance or some form of athletics, I've tried to see how I can re-engage with that being back home now after uni. So I've been going to a lot of different like classes here and there. So I just like to explore. I'm a very like explorative. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been immersing
yeah.
myself in javelin, in dance,
Oh,
in
that's really good. Really
yeah,
good.
whatever there is,
Yeah.
I've probably done it, so
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, I think we can't stress enough the importance of work-life balance.
Yeah,
I think when I'm having every mentoring conversation, I stress that work-life balance is important for mentors as well as mentees, for people on their early career, mid-career, late career, even
mm,
retired. It's very important so that, you just make sure you recoup back the energy that has been lost. It's so
yeah,
important. Yeah. Working hard and not giving yourself any relaxation time can lead to burnout, as we know.
mm.
What would you say will be your most astounding achievement in the last 2 years? And why have you chosen
Hmm.
that particular area? You are a
It's
lady of many talents. You see,
it's hard to
you are
pick just
thinking,
one.
wow, I like that.
I would say
I
I
would
would
struggle, actually.
I
I
would
would struggle.
I imagine you do struggle because you're very similar to me.
Actually, as you are thinking, I'm going to have to think about my last 2 years as well.
Yeah, we have to
Okay.
reflect together.
Has to be fair.
I would
All right.
say, um, of most recent I
Hmm.
would say that graduating, building on new skills, building new relationships, immersing myself in a new form of academic study that also took me abroad for a whole year. I have been thrown into the deep end in so many different ways. And I think for it to culminate with such a important moment of celebration, that for the last 4 years has been one of my most amazing achievements. And I say for any young person in that stage of life as well, I'm probably sure they would say the same thing.
I would say in the last 2 years, I thought it was my picture book, Little
Yes.
Caterpillar's Big Surprise, because I'm so proud of that book. It's one that I've really put my heart and soul in. The prototype toy for Little Caterpillar was just finished yesterday.
Wow.
But that
Congratulations.
was that I wouldn't say that's my most outstanding achievement. My most outstanding achievement actually is when I taught myself to develop apps.
Yes, I have
Yes,
been
so
saying
yeah, I have
yes.
released some apps on our neurodevelopmental platform, and it's because I've been wanting to do this for such a long time. And I was
Mm,
thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to learn? Am I going to pay someone to do it? Then I found the program with all the AI tools, taught myself, and I've probably churned out about 10 different apps in the last
wow.
month or so. Yeah. So I would say that's probably the something that I'm most proud of. The most, yeah, I feel because it's all in that sort of AI field and all this,
Mm,
yeah, that's why. Because writing is something I've been doing for a long time. And obviously, being a clinician, I've been doing that for a long time. But this is
yeah,
almost like a new area for me. And I would say it's my most outstanding achievement in the
yeah,
last 2 years. That
I
has
can imagine.
gone ahead of my writing,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but it is it is what it is.
I think something that I have always learned from you is to continue to, again, I think that's why I cite curiosity as such an important
Yeah,
interpersonal skill.
yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
your curiosity and the way that you also follow through on that initiative has always been an inspiration to me because it's always about not limiting yourself. And I think so many women in my life have represented that same understanding. Like, do not limit yourself. Go after every dream, go
Yeah,
after every ambition, and just make it happen. Just make it happen.
yeah, yeah. We in our network, we love to amplify that,
Yeah.
isn't it? We always shout it. We shout it to make sure that look, there isn't this metaphorical glass ceiling
Mm,
can be shattered. It can be shattered.
exactly.
People have built on and built on and built on for years and years and years. So it can be shattered individually and collectively as a community. Yeah.
Mm,
Okay. So as someone starting on your career journey, you would have faced some challenges, right? Even though
yeah.
I would say you recently started your work and
Mm.
what let's talk about some of the challenges you have faced and how you have overcome them.
So it's interesting. I think the challenge that I've faced probably links back to something we just recently discussed regarding work life balance. I
Mhm.
think when you're young and you're first emerging in the workplace, I think you feel
So,
maybe a burden to prove yourself and to ensure that you have that credibility and to ensure that you do make good impressions and that you're doing everything to a perfectionist standard, or maybe that is just me. But I think that has had an impact on how much I prioritize or had prioritized initially a work life balance, because I think I spent so much time dedicated to work. Even when you're meant to be on leave away from work, you're still thinking about work. And so I think having those boundaries, I had to start, and it's happened very recently, just really implementing those boundaries because, whilst I love my job, in order to be able to sustain my ethic towards my job, I need to have that balance between work and life. And I think also having a richness in life has allowed me to have such a richness in my work as well, because I have that space for two. So I would say that's how I've been able to overcome that, through implementing those boundaries, allowing myself to enjoy those extracurriculars that I've told you about. And yeah, just again, making sure that I know that I'm working hard as I am and that I can continue doing that and also resting at the same time.
yeah. Yeah, the work-life balance thing can be very tricky.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that one has to just aggressively and actively always confront and make sure you are reflecting on the work life because sometimes it creeps in and you don't even realize
Yeah.
that you are either working too hard and running at full speed.
Yeah.
I definitely learned a valuable lesson last year because I was doing just that and I had to deal with other things as well. And then I always say to some of our new colleagues, look, I remember when I started as a new consultant, I would be staying in the office for hours,
Mm,
just past the time I needed to go home. And I always say the work doesn't stop. You
yeah.
can be staying in your office for hours, but you come back, and then what happens is that they've heaped more work on your desk. There's this saying, imagine when you are mopping the floor and you've got a hole in the roof, right? And it's raining.
Okay.
The rain is coming through that little crack in your roof,
Yeah.
wetting the floor, and you're mopping it. Okay, instead of putting a bucket where
Yeah.
the crack is. It's like that when you don't have that work-life balance and you keep going on at full steam without necessarily taking a step back to reflect on things, take stock of things. Then you
Yeah.
just keep on going, and then the work is adding on. The work will never stop. You come back to it. So I always say to mentees, I say to my junior colleagues, I leave the work, I have to learn it, that no matter how much you do, you still come back and meet more. So just do
Yeah.
what you can in the day and then step back and go ahead with your life. And then the other thing is to try not to take work home.
Exactly. And I
I'm
think
still learning that lesson not to take work home because I love
I'm
my
still
work.
learning that as
I
well
love my
as
work.
we speak. And I think that,
Yeah,
for a lot
yeah,
of young people who might be listening to this discussion as well, I think I want them to understand that there are a lot of us that are experiencing this period or these difficulties with burnout, and that they should feel seen in that they're not alone. Because I think
exactly.
especially when confronted with the levels of youth unemployment in the UK and the challenges around the job market, I think a lot of young people are definitely piling on a lot of pressure on themselves
Pressure.
with those that
Oh, I
have,
agree.
jobs or are involved in
Yeah,
the workplace, because, the fear of instability is really great.
real
It's a
fear, isn't
long,
it?
yeah,
I
exactly.
agree.
And so I feel as though, we are more likely to burn ourselves out or overwork ourselves to overcompensate for those situations. So I want people to know that, those feelings are very real. You're very validated in that.
I agree. And, and this is again where I'll mention mentoring, having a mentor. And I always say that you can have different mentors. You don't have to have just one mentor. You can have a mentor for your life chapters, a mentor for your career, mentor for interpersonal skills,
Y-
people that you can trust who can
Yeah.
walk by you, by your side, just guiding you very gently through
Oh,
your career. I can't emphasize it is enough. It's invaluable. People
yeah.
think that it's just something that you can just, push
Not
under the
at all.
cover. It isn't. It's a very, 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 very powerful tool, and
Yeah.
it can help people to progress in all aspects of their life.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would
Uh,
that be? I know
It's
I've
this
pulled a surprise. I
you
have
always
pulled
give
a
me
surprise.
you've always given me the challenging questions.
You love challenges.
I love challenges, so
I've gone out of script now. Okay. Now I know, but yeah,
no,
you
we
can
have
handle it.
to. Um,
Yeah.
so for my younger self, I would say to I think it's twofold. I would give myself two forms of advice. I would say always be brave to step into those spaces, regardless of what anyone says. You are meant to be in those spaces. And then
Wow.
I would say another one, give yourself grace. I think for a lot of people that might have a very high achieving mindset, you probably don't step back enough and validate yourself for all that you've done, all that you've overcome, and how much you're still raring to go for the challenges ahead. I think always tell yourself, like, listen, you're doing a great job. Validate yourself. And then when situations arise where there might be a setback, give yourself grace. And I think, yeah, my younger self and my current self always need to hear that. Being brave and always give yourself grace.
Wow. I'm writing it.
You're writing it down. Yeah.
I am writing it down. I love it. I love it. I love it. Validate it. Validate yourself. Give yourself that grace, that faith. It's amazing.
We've got a couple different sayings out of
I'm
today's
telling you.
episode.
Honestly, Tammy, we have to do some legacy work,
We have to.
looking at writing up something, writing up some of our stories and putting it in
Mm.
some kind of filming
Oh, that would be
or a
lovely.
book
Yeah.
so that it is a legacy for the younger generations. It's amazing
Yes.
the sort of talent we have in the network. Let's talk about
Mm.
mentoring. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've touched on mentoring, we've highlighted some of the benefits of mentoring as we've had this conversation. But as a mentee, let's hear your own experience of how mentoring and also one-to-one mentoring network has contributed to who you are today.
I would say from one to one, I definitely think, and it has contributed to the feedback I gave to my younger self about being brave. When I had the opportunity to come in as a youth ambassador, my first thought was, I don't think they've got the right person. If I'm honest, my first thought was to be doubtful of whether I could actually take to that opportunity and do well at it. And I think it was, having to fake it till you make it, having to go there anyway and say, listen, I've been given a commitment, I've been given a job. The worst thing that could happen is I don't do it. So it's actually important that I do. And so being given the opportunity and the platform to speak, to be trusted by other mentors and mentees to use my voice responsibly, it helped my confidence. It has made me feel that I'm a lot more capable than I probably gave myself credit for in that period. You never know what opportunities you can obtain for yourself unless you approach a space that will like actually give you opportunities, because I don't think I would have signed myself up for some of the things that I've been able to do through one to one just naturally off my own back. I think it's having people say, okay, we know that you're good at this, but let's have you do this. We know you're good at speaking, but let's have you do
Out
writing.
of your comfort zone. Get you out
Pulling
of
me
your
out of
comfort
my
zone.
comfort
Yeah,
zone,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was such
Yeah,
a
yeah.
big thing for me,
Yeah.
and I do think, yeah, learning how to be flexible as well, and, yeah, just learning how to think big. I think mentoring is great because it's a big soundboard for you to be able to really think bigger than what you currently are doing, so, yeah, I think it's made my ambitions even greater having one-to-one mentoring network in my experience and, yeah,
Yeah.
in my network as well.
Yeah, I'm just so happy, that we have contributed to part of your journey, your
Yeah,
ongoing journey, your early career. We've had an amazing conversation, Tammy. I've
thank you.
actually learned also from you, and this is what the reverse mentoring is, So despite the fact that yes, you are a mentee, I'm a mentor,
Yeah,
there's also the reverse mentoring where I have learned a lot. Like I said, I've picked some of the things that you've said about progress not being a sprint, is a marathon,
mm,
the bit about the just belong in that space. You need to
mm,
feel that that space has been made for you and you belong in that space. The bit about
mm.
validating yourself, and then the bit about grace. Give yourself grace.
Mm,
Basically, don't also take yourself too serious. We've talked about work-life balance. We
yeah,
talked about the importance of interpersonal skills. Yeah,
absolutely.
we've celebrated some of our achievements. And so it's so important for people to know that despite the challenges, there are also achievements, and also making sure that the focus is on the achievements. And then the
Mm,
fact that challenges and barriers can be overcome. We talked about how we can develop resilience, how we can achieve some of those barriers, overcome some of the barriers, and the importance of network, the people who surround us, the social networks that we link up with, the family networks, the friendship networks, and then some
yeah,
of the work life balance and the importance of making sure that we don't burn out by
yes.
ensuring that we have other things that we're doing. We touched on poetry and your radio show and
Mm,
some of the things that you do to make sure you maintain that work life balance. And we have encouraged our mentees to do the same. So, one to one mentoring network is a mentoring network that we just don't run events. We are very, very serious about the business of mentoring people. And the
mm,
mentoring touches on career, it touches on your life chapters, it touches on interpersonal skills. We particularly like to work with people around their interpersonal skills because you can be the brightest kid on the block, But if you struggle with your interpersonal skills, that can really, really retard the progress, your career progress. So I just want to encourage people to reach out to one-to-one mentoring. Those of you who are hearing or listening or watching us, and you can reach us on www.one-to-one-mentoring.com. You Google one-to-one mentoring network, actually we come up. So today has been amazing.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having
no, I
me.
feel like I'm on X Factor.
Really?
Amazing.
Uh,
Honestly, it's been such a lovely, lovely conversation with yourself. Thank you so much for those of you that are listening or watching our mentoring conversation. It's time to say goodbye. And I hope to see all of you for the fourth episode. Ciao. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.